In this video, we're going to demonstrate the orchestration activities that allow you to stop and start a Windows service. As you look at the screen here, I've just modeled a simple example where we're going to stop a service, we're going to wait a set amount of time, and then we're going to start the service back up. This is obviously a simple test case that will run in the simulator. However, this example could be tied to a much larger process, something where you may have a service catalog request where someone requests to stop a service, and then once it's approved, it is stopped, or maybe they need to stop and restart it, and there needs to be an approval process for that. So you could use these activities in that context. Another scenario may be an event from a monitoring system comes in and you need to stop and start a service. So these activities can be used for many different use cases. In this example, I'm just going to run it manually so you can see it execute. I'll go into the first activity here, and they're really quite simple. We define the host name. This can be dynamic. I'm just statically typing it in here, and then we define the service, in this case, that we're going to stop. So there's a couple of different options here, start and stop. This first one here, we're going to stop. And then the service that we're going to stop, I've made this dynamic, and so when I run the workflow, it's going to prompt me for the service name. And so that is just to give you some context around the ability to have dynamic information keyed in coming from a service catalog or from event or something like that. So that's what this reference here is that variable. That variable in this example is defined when I go to edit inputs for the workflow. That's where that variable has been defined. And so when we run it, you'll see that. Once the service is stopped, we're going to wait and we're going to start it. So let me switch over to my virtual machine here. Okay, so here's our virtual machine, and here's the list of services. You can see I've got this one on here, print spooler. So this is the one I was going to use, or I am going to use for our example. And the service name is actually spooler. And so that'll be what I key in. So here's our virtual machine. There's a mid server running on this virtual machine, and what it does is go to ServiceNow and pull these requests when workflow submits these requests. And so once this activity runs, it's going to put an entry in our mid server queue, call it the ECC queue, and then it'll be picked up and executed on the machine. And what we'll do now is go ahead and run this. So I'll go ahead and type in spooler as the service name, and when I submit it, we're going to see the runtime view of the workflow. And if we switch over to the virtual machine, you can see print spooler status is started, so it's already been running. I'll go ahead and refresh this and see if that command has gotten picked up yet, and it has. So you can see here that it's no longer running. If we switch back to our workflow and I refresh our workflow, you can see now that we're in our wait state. So we're waiting for this timer to complete. Again, it should take roughly a minute, and then we'll restart the service. Okay, you can see that the timer has completed, and now we're changing the service state. We're starting it. So I'll switch over to the virtual machine and refresh our service. So there's our print spooler service. Go ahead and refresh the list, and you can see that the orchestration activity has set that print spooler service back into a started state. If we switch back to our workflow, we refresh that, you can see it successfully did that, and it's now gone to the end. And so that's it. That's a quick example of how you can use ServiceNow workflow in concert with the orchestration activities to stop and start a Windows service.